What if I told you that the most financially sophisticated people you'll ever meet are often driving cars that look like they belong in a junkyard? Not because they can't afford something better, but because they've figured out something that most people spend decades learning the hard way. Today, we're going to talk about why driving an old, beat-up car might be one of the smartest financial decisions you can ever make. And I'm going to back it up with real numbers that are going to genuinely surprise you. Stick with me here, because by the end of this video, you're going to see your neighbor's shiny new car in a completely different light. And honestly, you might never look at a car payment the same way again. Let's start with something uncomfortable. Most people treat their car as a reflection of who they are. Think about the last time you pulled into a parking lot and noticed someone stepping out of a brand new luxury vehicle. There's almost this automatic assumption, right? That person must be doing well. They must be successful. And that's exactly the trap. That psychological association between expensive cars and personal success is costing ordinary people hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetimes. Not thousands, hundreds of thousands. And we're going to prove that with math in just a few minutes. But first, let's define what we're actually talking about when we say beater. A beater is simply a reliable older vehicle, usually something that's paid off, has some miles on it, maybe a few dents and scratches, and most importantly, doesn't require you to make a monthly payment to a bank or a dealership. It's not glamorous. It might not turn heads, but here's what it does do. It gets you from point A to point B, and it keeps money in your pocket every single month. That's the whole game. Now, here's where things get really interesting. And this is the part most people completely ignore when they're standing in a dealership showroom looking at that beautiful new car smell. Depreciation. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses somewhere around 10 to 15% of its value. Not over a year. On day one. By the end of the first year, the average new car has lost roughly 20% of its purchase price. And this keeps going. Within 5 years, most new vehicles are worth only about 40% of what was paid for them originally. So when you buy a new $40,000 vehicle, you are essentially handing over $24,000 to the dealership over 5 years just in depreciation losses alone. That's before you've paid a single dollar of interest on your loan. When you buy a beater, let's say a 10-year-old car with 120,000 miles on it for $4,000 or $5,000, that depreciation curve has already done its worst. The person who owned that car before you already absorbed all of that painful loss. You're buying the vehicle at the bottom of its value drop, and from that point forward, the depreciation is minimal compared to what came before. You've essentially outsourced the most expensive part of car ownership to whoever bought it new. And that is genuinely clever, whether you realize that was your strategy or not. Let me paint a picture with some actual numbers, because I think this is where the real eye-opener happens for most people. Let's compare two people. Call them Alex and Jordan. Alex decides to buy a brand new car. Reasonable choice, right? Nothing crazy. A standard new sedan at around $35,000. Alex puts a small down payment and finances the rest over 60 months at a fairly typical interest rate. Their monthly payment comes out to around $550 per month. Jordan, on the other hand, buys a reliable used car for $5,000 cash. Maybe it's a 12-year-old Toyota Camry or a Honda Civic with a solid maintenance record. Jordan has no monthly payment. Now watch what happens when we extend this out. Over 5 years, Alex has paid $33,000 in car payments alone. Add in the higher insurance costs that come with a newer financed vehicle, and you're probably adding another $1,500 per year minimum compared to what Jordan is paying. That's an additional $7,500 over the same period. We're now at $40,500 that Alex has spent or committed to just on the car. Jordan spent $5,000 to buy the car outright. Maybe Jordan puts some money aside for repairs and maintenance. Let's be generous and say Jordan spends $2,000 over 5 years on unexpected repairs. That's $7,000 total. The difference between Alex and Jordan over just 5 years is $33,500. But here's the part that makes this really sink in. What if Jordan invested that difference? If Jordan took the equivalent of what Alex was spending each month and put it into a basic index fund averaging around 7% annual returns, that $33,000 difference over 5 years grows significantly. And if they keep doing this for 30 years, we're talking about life-changing, retirement-securing, generational wealth-building money, all because Jordan chose to drive an older car. And look, I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, okay, but what about reliability? What about breakdowns? What about getting stranded on the highway? These are legitimate concerns, and I don't want to dismiss them, because repairs are a real cost of driving an older vehicle. But let's think about this honestly. The average monthly car payment in the United States right now is over $700. $700 a month. Do you know how much car maintenance you can cover with $700 a month? You could have a mechanic on speed dial and still come out way ahead. Even if your beater needed a $1,000 repair every single month, which is essentially impossible and completely unrealistic, you would still be breaking even compared to someone with a new car payment. And repairs almost never cost that much consistently. The average person with an older, paid-off vehicle might spend $1,500 to $2,000 a year on maintenance and repairs, beyond normal oil changes and tires. That's still a fraction of what a monthly car payment costs annually. Here's another angle that people rarely consider. When you own your car outright, especially an older, cheaper one, you have dramatically more flexibility with your insurance coverage. With a financed vehicle, your lender requires you to carry comprehensive and collision coverage. You don't have a choice. They're protecting their asset, which is the car that you technically don't fully own yet. But when your car is paid off and it's worth $5,000 or less, you can make the decision to drop comprehensive and collision coverage and just carry liability. Depending on where you live and your driving record, this can save you anywhere from $800 to over $2,000 a year in insurance premiums alone. So now we're adding even more to the savings column for the beater driver. And then there's the psychological dimension of this whole thing. This is where it gets really deep, and I think it's genuinely underappreciated. When you owe money on a car, you're tethered to that payment. It affects every other financial decision you make. You can't take a risk on starting a business because you have to make that payment. You can't afford to take a lower-paying job that you'd actually love because you have to make that payment. You can't handle a financial emergency without stress because between the car payment and all your other obligations, there's no room. The car payment is a chain, and most people put that chain on willingly because the car looks good. When your car is paid off, even if it's old and a little rough around the edges, you have something incredibly valuable. You have options. Financial freedom isn't just about having a lot of money, it's about having choices. And a paid-off car, even a humble one, gives you choices that a car payment takes away. Now let's talk about who actually does this in real life. Because if you think it's just broke people driving old cars out of necessity, you're wrong. There's fascinating research and anecdotal evidence from studying wealthy people, particularly self-made wealthy people rather than inherited wealth, that shows a significant number of them are intentionally driving older, less flashy vehicles. The book The Millionaire Next Door, which studied the actual spending habits of millionaires in America, found that the most common vehicle among millionaires was not a luxury brand. It was a Ford or a Toyota. Practical, reliable, not a status symbol. Because people who actually built wealth understand that looking wealthy and being wealthy are two very different things. Often, they're mutually exclusive. The people who spend aggressively on appearing wealthy are often the ones with the least actual wealth. The fancy car, the designer clothes, the big house, and the expensive neighborhood, these are signals that someone is allocating their resources toward appearance rather than assets. Meanwhile, the quiet millionaire next door is driving a 10-year-old pickup truck and letting their investments compound quietly in the background. This is what behavioral economists call signaling. And the irony is that expensive cars are usually a signal of debt, not wealth. When you see someone in a brand new luxury car, the statistically more likely scenario is that they're making a payment on it, not that they paid cash. Real wealth is almost always invisible. It's the brokerage account, the real estate, the business equity. These things don't have a visible shine that people can admire in a parking lot. Let me also address the total cost of ownership concept, because I don't think people add this up nearly enough. When you buy a car, the sticker price is just the beginning. You've got your down payment, your monthly payments, your interest paid over the loan term, your insurance, your registration fees, which are often higher for newer, more expensive vehicles, depreciation losses, and maintenance. When you add all of these up over the full ownership period, the true cost of a new mid-range vehicle is often double or triple the sticker price. A $35,000 car can easily cost you $60,000 to $70,000 by the time you account for everything over its ownership life cycle. Now, compare that to the total cost of ownership on a $5,000 beater. Even if you spend generously on repairs and maintenance, your total cost over the same period is a fraction of that. And I want to spend a moment on something that the car industry absolutely does not want you thinking about. They have perfected the art of making monthly payments feel manageable while completely obscuring the true cost of what you're buying. You don't walk into a dealership and discuss the total price of the car, most of the time. You discuss your monthly payment. Can you afford $500 a month? Can you do $600? And your brain, wired to think in short-term chunks, says, yeah, I can manage that. And so you sign. But you've just committed to tens of thousands of dollars over years, all while the car steadily loses value beneath you. It's a masterclass in financial manipulation, and it works on incredibly smart people every single day because the psychology is so cleverly designed. Now, let me give you some practical guidance on actually doing this well, because I don't want this to just be theory. If you're going to commit to the beater strategy, there's a right way to do it that maximizes the financial benefits while managing the downsides intelligently. First, buy the right beater. Not all used cars are created equal. Reliability data from sources like Consumer Reports will show you quickly that certain makes and models hold up dramatically better at high mileage than others. Japanese manufacturers, particularly Toyota and Honda, have a decades-long track record of engines and transmissions going well past 200,000 miles with proper maintenance. A 15-year-old Camry or Accord with a solid service history is going to be a much better beater than a 15-year-old European luxury vehicle that requires specialized parts and boutique mechanics. Do your homework before you buy. Second, get a pre-purchase inspection from an independent mechanic before you hand over any money. This is non-negotiable. For $100 to $150, a mechanic can tell you everything that's wrong with the vehicle before you commit to it. This one step can save you from buying someone else's expensive problem. If the seller won't let you take the car to a mechanic for an inspection, walk away. That's a red flag. Third, build a repair fund. This is critical, and it's where the beater strategy really needs discipline. Set aside a specific amount each month into a dedicated savings account for car maintenance and repairs. Think of it like paying yourself a car payment, except instead of paying a bank, you're paying your future self for the inevitable costs of keeping an older vehicle running. Even setting aside $200 to $300 a month for this purpose means you're still saving dramatically compared to an average car payment, and you'll have the funds ready when something does need attention. Fourth, learn some basic maintenance yourself if you're willing and able. Changing your own oil, replacing air filters, swapping brake pads. These are things most people can learn with a YouTube tutorial and a basic set of tools. This saves you labor costs, which are often a significant portion of any repair bill. You're not going to rebuild an engine yourself necessarily, but handling the routine stuff can save you hundreds of dollars a year. Fifth, be strategic about when you eventually do upgrade. The beater strategy doesn't mean you drive your car into the ground and then panic about replacing it. You should be watching your vehicle and having honest conversations with your mechanic about its long-term outlook. When major systems start showing their age and the repair costs begin climbing toward the car's actual value, that's when it makes sense to move on. And at that point, because you've been saving and investing instead of making payments, you'll likely have the resources to pay cash for your next vehicle. Which brings me to one of the most powerful applications of this whole philosophy: cash for cars. The goal of the beater strategy, if you really commit to it, is to eventually be in a position where you never need to finance a vehicle again. You save the money that would have gone to a car payment, you build that fund, and when it's time to get a different vehicle, you pay cash. This is how you permanently escape the car payment trap. And once you've experienced it, once you know what it feels like to not owe anyone a monthly payment on a depreciating asset, it becomes very hard to go back. Let's also address the social pressure element, because it's real, and I don't want to minimize it. There will absolutely be people in your life who judge you for your older vehicle. Coworkers who notice, family members who make comments. The culture around cars in many places is deeply tied to status and identity, and swimming against that current takes genuine confidence in a clear sense of your own values and priorities. But here's a reframe that might help. Every time someone looks at your car and feels slightly superior to you because theirs is newer, that person is paying for that feeling, probably somewhere between $500 and $800 a month. You're getting that feeling of superiority for free because you know something they don't. You know where your money actually is, and it's not sitting in a parking lot losing value. There's also a longer game here that's worth acknowledging. The habits that lead someone to drive a beater intentionally, financial patience, delayed gratification, long-term thinking, prioritizing substance over appearance, these are the same habits that build real, lasting wealth across every area of life. The person who can resist the pull of a shiny new car is likely the same person who can resist lifestyle inflation when their salary goes up, who can hold their investments steady during a market downturn, who can make clear-headed decisions with money instead of emotional ones. The car is almost a litmus test for financial discipline. And let's zoom out for a second and think about the macro scale here. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, the financial decisions you make in this decade are going to echo for the rest of your life, thanks to compound growth. The money that doesn't go toward car payments can go toward investments, and investments made young have decades to grow. We're not talking about small differences in retirement savings. We're talking about potentially millions of dollars of difference in total lifetime wealth between the person who always bought new cars and the person who committed to the beater strategy for even just the first decade of their working life. That's not an exaggeration. Run the numbers on compound growth at decent market returns over 40 years, and the difference in total wealth from redirecting even $400 a month is genuinely staggering. I want to close with this thought. Our culture spends enormous energy convincing us that what we drive says something profound about who we are. Car commercials don't sell transportation. They sell identity, freedom, status, adventure, romance, and they're extraordinarily good at it. But behind every compelling car commercial is a monthly payment that chips away at your actual financial freedom month after month for years. The beater doesn't come with a commercial. Nobody's making a 30-second spot with sweeping mountain roads and dramatic music to celebrate the 11-year-old Honda sitting in your driveway. But that Honda, paid off and reliable, might be the single most effective financial tool you own. The truly wealthy people understand this. Financial advisors understand this. And now you understand it too. The next time you feel that pull, that desire for something newer, shinier, more impressive, I hope you remember this conversation. I hope you remember what those monthly payments actually cost you, not just in dollars, but in freedom, in choices, in future wealth. The goal was never to have the nicest car in the parking lot. The goal is to have the fullest life. And more often than not, those two things are in direct competition with each other. Drive the beater, invest the difference, and let time do the rest of the work for you. If this video made you think differently about how you approach cars and money, do me a favor and share it with someone who's thinking about buying a new car right now. You might save them from a very expensive mistake. And if you want to go deeper on building real financial independence and breaking the habits that keep most people broke, make sure you subscribe because we're just getting started. Like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos helping you with investing, personal finance, and more. Check out this playlist of my top videos of personal picks, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.